Okay, so I just watched The Boogeyman and I definitely have some thoughts. This one kind of snuck under the radar marketing wise. I read that it was originally intended to be straight to streaming, but it was getting positive test screenings, so they decided to throw it into theaters. Which, like, yo, real quick side rant, that tells you everything you need to know about the streaming business model right there, doesn't it? They made this movie and went, oh wait, shit, it's actually kind of good. People actually like this. I guess we should do a theater release. Like, it's so rare that something made for streaming actually turns out well that they changed the entire release format. They were straight up surprised that they produced something that people actually enjoyed. They're out here like intentionally making garbage on the cheap and just dumping it on their platforms because they don't care if people actually think it's good. If someone watches for a few minutes and shuts it off, they still get to record that as a stream and tell all the shareholders that they're killing it. Anyway, yeah, that's a separate issue. As far as this particular movie goes, yeah, I actually thought it was pretty good. It is also fairly derivative, but I didn't realize going in that this was actually based on a Stephen King short story from, I believe, the 70s, so that does explain some of the familiarity. I don't think I can really get into how I feel about this movie exactly without having spoilers in it, so if you want to go in totally clean, just trust me, it's worth checking out if you're into horror. We got a pretty solid scary movie in the middle of June. I'm happy with that. If you don't want to know anymore, just leave it there. Anyway, almost every aspect of this movie, and I do mean pretty much every aspect, you've definitely seen already in other horror movies. And not just throughout history, like pretty recently. Tonally, this movie actually reminded me a lot of Smile. Spoiler warning if you haven't seen that one yet either. You totally should if you haven't, by the way. But yeah, you know, there's that thing where like very similar movies weirdly come out right around the same time sometimes. Like some of the most famously discussed ones were Armageddon and The Rock in the 90s, or a more recent example would be Friends with Benefits and It's Complicated. I think Smile and The Boogeyman kind of fit into that category, honestly. The protagonist in Smile was a nurse working with mentally unstable people. In The Boogeyman, the daughter's more so the main protagonist, but the main adult character, the dad, is a clinical psychologist. Throughout both movies, we're sort of led to question whether what they're experiencing is actually real or all in their heads. The monster design is pretty similar with the like long lankiness. In Smile, it could appear as people you know. In The Boogeyman, it can imitate their voices. Both films have parts where the main character tracks down someone who's been labeled crazy who dealt with it in the past, but no one believed them. The way they deal with the monster in the end is by burning it in both movies. And they even have the same kind of is it over or is it still around type of gotcha ending. The creatures have basically the same lore of like no one knows how old it is, it's been around forever, feeding on the vulnerable type of shit. Of course, we also have the classic here's some sketchy kids drawings of the monster before we actually get to see it on screen in both films as well. With all of that said though, I'm pretty sure this movie wasn't actually trying to rip off Smile. There wouldn't have been enough time since that movie came out to copy it that much and get it out this quickly. As far as the rest of the horror tropes go, I can forgive them a lot easier knowing that it's adapted from like a 50-year-old Stephen King story, which obviously helped establish a lot of those tropes in the first place. Aside from the overwhelming familiarity, the movie was honestly quite solid. Definitely well above the average acting for a horror movie. Chris Messina is pretty underrated in general in my opinion, and Sophie Thatcher is really good as well. We get a brief but again really good appearance from David Dastmalchian as a creepy dude again too, his specialty. I also thought they did a good job handling the appearance of the monster, and it usually only being in near total darkness. Obviously yes, that can be a budget saving tactic as well, but when done appropriately with holding a clear shot of the monster until the end is something that I tend to appreciate in horror movies. Aside from, again, the treading of familiar territory, the only real detractor in this movie for me was some of the plot writing in the middle was a little lazy. Like with Sadie and her group of friends, she has this one friend who she clearly actually likes, and then the other girls she hangs out with completely suck. And the whole movie we get this impression of Sadie as like a wise beyond her years, pretty well-rounded teenager. But then she invites this entire group of girls over to her house after one of them bullied her, assaulted her, and ruined her dead mother's dress earlier in the movie. Like, I understand that they wanted to get this group of young girls into the haunted house so that spooky shit can happen, but come on, you've basically spent half the movie establishing that our main character is smarter than that. Overall, I definitely did enjoy watching this in the theater, and I'd say this movie was pretty good overall despite its faults. Didn't overdo the jump scares, but it did get me with a couple nice ones. It's well acted, it's not a CGI fest mess. This is a solid movie for horror fans, and if you're starved for something scary, this should at least scratch that itch right now. And yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts with this one. Let me know what you thought if you've seen it in the comments. If you got a minute to like and subscribe, that'd be massively appreciated. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.